I'm a Newporter, a Fifth Ward Newporter of Irish descent, and I was born and brought up in the Fifth Ward, and I hope I'll die in the Fifth Ward, my favorite end of town. My grandmother and grandfather both came from Ireland on both sides, my mother's parents and my father's parents, and they came in the 1860s, and all four of them in that area, 1860s, and they all settled eventually, not at first, in Newport, and they worked for the mansions. My mother's father was a stonemason. He worked on the breakers. He worked 6 days a week, and he got $6 a week. His hours were 6 a.m. to 6 p.m., and my mother and three sisters took turns taking, as all the Irish kids did in the Fifth Ward at that time, taking a hot lunch down to him over water in a pail, and Grandpa would eat it, and then that girl, whosever turn it was too late to go back to school in the afternoon, so at least one day a week, one of them would miss school in the afternoon. My grandfather on the other side was a livery driver and drove horses for delivery around the island. Mostly he worked in the summer like many of them. My grandfather, after the breakers was finished, became a gardener over at the base, and in the winter, when there was no work at the base, Grandpa Sullivan would cut ice down at the lily pond, and they'd store it in the ice houses with hay, so the Avenue people would have it for the summer. Newporters never used the ice. My father's mother, Grandma Sullivan, had 10 children, so she never worked. She didn't have to, she worked at home. My father's mother and father, Grandma Downey first came to America and went with her sister up in northern New York. Her husband was a Civil War veteran, and they had a farm up there. She didn't like living in the northern parts of New York, evidently didn't like snow, and she came to Newport where her other sister was, two sisters, and they all worked in the mansions, and then in the winter did whatever they could to survive. I was born in 1928, and we moved to different parts of the Fifth Ward, finally bought a house on Simmons Street, and the church and school were the focus of my world growing up. I was one of four. I'm the oldest of four. My sister, who's deceased, was 2 years younger than I. My brother, who's deceased, was 2 years younger than I. And my kid sister is Grace, right over here. I was 10 when she was born. We lived there. I went to school for 8 years at St. Augustine's, 4 years to St. Catherine's. Everything focused around church and school in my life growing up. We were an Irish neighborhood. We weren't into each other's houses, but if somebody had a problem, everybody was over there to help, not all at the same time helping. Everybody was active. They made sure that the church, having the school plays, the school functions, to keep the parents going to the functions and keep them active and talk about church and school, and mostly talk about making sure that they get to Mass on Sunday. That was very important.